Speaking at a conference of religious leaders a few weeks ago, UCC Minister Reverend Tracy Blackman referenced a recent Guardian article highlighting 2 homes, both of which were spared during the recent Palisades fire and Eaton fire in the greater LA basin. Why, one wonders, were these 2 homes left intact while entire neighborhoods around them burned to the ground? Well, according to the article, the first home, Greg Chasen, architect of the first home, pointed to a number of design features that helped fend off the raging fires. A vegetation-free zone around the yard fenced off by a solid concrete perimeter wall, a metal roof with a fire-resistant underlayment, Class A wood, which I found is the highest rating available for fire resistance, and a front gable design without multiple roof lines. In the West Side Los Angeles neighborhood, another home with a metal roof, cement design, and covered chimney appeared in excellent condition, while the homes all around it were burned. This house was perfect. It was built for this, said a federal firefighter with the U.S. Forest Services, who was deployed to fight the Palisade fire. Not all homes are built for this. This is the article Reverend Blackman referenced, saying she looked at the pictures of these 2 homes every day and calls for hope and resilience in the midst of the current chaos and crisis. The 2 homes that you just saw on the screen are evidence that there are no shortcuts, no surefire, easygoing formulas, as our scripture text of this morning states. This leads us to ask, is our house built for this? Now, by our house, I ultimately mean this figuratively and spiritually, but I will reference our physical structure and design a little later. Before we drill down more deeply, let's begin with the collective. Are we as a faith community built for this? Well, the next question then is, what is this? What are we built for or not? We're not only speaking about physical fires. This is the season, the time in history in which we find ourselves. Last week I ushered you into the foyer, or into the entryway of this consideration, so to speak, by stating it's a season of fire, of earthquakes, of harsh winters. It is a season of chaos and cruelty. Are we built for this? Have we been employing sound building practices for spirituality and intentional lifestyle, or do we need some significant renovation? Are we strong, or are we vulnerable? Or maybe we need to learn new practices as the bird who no longer could fly. The homeowners whose homes survived the fires were realistic first and intentional next. People who live in environmentally vulnerable areas must take the possibility of crisis seriously. Fires are increasing in intensity and in frequency. The first house you saw was recently renovated to be much more fire resilient. In fact, the owner had just moved back in 6 months before this last fire. In order to practice environmental stewardship, we must be alert, be realistic, and be prepared to renovate or adapt. Now, a brief word about structure and design. We are in a conversation, an ongoing conversation, as a development working group, which is a group of volunteers right from within these pews, to develop, to change the entire footprint of who we are on this corner of North Fresno and Browning Streets. Environmental stewardship for what will happen, what is planned, is a top priority. With stewardship comes resilience, and then comes increased safety. It's a critical conversation with deep roots in spiritual faithfulness to Creator and to each member of the human and the more than human world. In addition, each individual here and listening to us online, or each household, has the opportunity also to have these discussions at home, personally. There is never a better time to be prepared, even to renovate, than now. As a spiritual house, are we strong or are we vulnerable when it comes to living as people of cultural humanity? And that may sound very lofty, but it really only refers to the current realities of this culture. It includes immigration humanity, the humanity of freedoms for everyone, regardless of belief, ethnic background, gender identity, country of origin. The humanity of respect and care offered to everyone equally. I know what we display on our walls and what's on our website. Is it time that we look at that more closely? Because in this time of fear and inhumanity, we need to know, are we living this consistently? Are we living according to our statements of faith? How do we get beyond a place of anger or blame or worry or paralysis? What Rhonda shared just a few minutes ago is a fantastic beginning. There's a lot there. I've also heard from a number of you this week about how you are finding ways and what kinds of resources you are gathering. The core of that is, how can we help practically? And these discussions and sharing of information are vital. It is networking. It is organizing. And from there, we move to tangible action. Every time we speak or act in accordance with our calling as Jesus followers, we are strengthening cultural humanity. This includes listening to each other patiently as we vent about our fears. It includes reaching out to those we know who may be feeling isolated and vulnerable. It includes reading longer reports and articles which move us well beyond sound bites and headlines. It's time to invest. There are no easygoing shortcuts. Remember, sound bites are designed for maximum impact, not to act, but to a visceral gut response. We are called to be people of solidity, building, shoring up our house upon a rock, not on shifting, sandy, momentary foundations which crumble at the first wave that rolls in. And we'll move to more practical steps in a few minutes. But before that, are our hearts built for this? Most world religions and philosophies refer to the heart as the place of emotional and spiritual well-being or dis-ease, including Christianity. The wise men of the Proverbs said, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." And Jesus states, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." So I repeat, are our hearts built for this season of fire, of harsh winters, of violent earthquakes, of chaos and crisis? Can our hearts stay steady, humble, resolved, and pure in the midst of all of this? Are we emotionally and spiritually and personally strong, or are we vulnerable and need to shore those vulnerabilities up? There's no doubt that people who are even minimally aware of what happens around them will sense discomfort and dis-ease in the current culture. It may not be over the same thing that disturbs you, but everyone is feeling this disturbance nonetheless. More and more people are experiencing dramatic increases in anxiety and stress and worry. Most people, even children, are being exposed to traumatic experiences they have never had before. Every human being and each member of the more than human world has experienced trauma of one sort or another, something that has injured us. We will be in a position to heal only to the extent that we first acknowledge that it has indeed happened, that we too are wounded. Each person has their own woundings. You may have experienced abandonment, being bullied, being discriminated against, being cut off by a loved one, needing to always be a caregiver regardless of your age or the situation. You may be experiencing a fracture in relationships because of the current political climate. And the list goes on and on. Now, I'm not here to turn this into a group therapy session because I'm neither capable or qualified to do that, but I do know one thing. I can be honest enough to tell you we're all here, and we are all wounded. The first and critical thing is to acknowledge that we are wounded. So given all the complexities of the heart we're dealing with, what now? Can we say with conviction, yes, our hearts and our house, they are built for this? It's okay if you hesitate. I hesitate too. But I do know that we can renovate, we can shore up, we can build resiliency and health. The Guardian article also mentioned that I referenced before. It talks about 12,000 houses, businesses, and other structures that have been lost in the recent raging wildfires. And Angelenos are quickly learning that the architectural and design choices people make play into the level of damage fire can cause to their structures, making some homes more prone to burning down, while others appear completely fire resilient. Extrapolating from that and applying it to our own resilience, let's look back at the words that Rod read from Matthew 7. The way to life, to God, is vigorous and requires total attention. These words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundational words, words to build a life on, end quote. So let's get at it. Because it is a season of fire, of earthquakes, of harsh winters, of cruelty and chaos. What are sound building practices for faith, for spirituality and emotional health that we can now employ? Build community. Whatever puts you in proximity to other humans in order to foster wholeness, beauty, and connection, do it. Sing in a community choir. Participate in watercolor classes. Join us for meditation and music and prayer nights. Come check out the community house gathering. Invite someone to join you for coffee just because. Volunteer in a community organization. Be sure to enjoy the next CUCC dinner in someone else's home or in your own. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. Second, strive for balance. If reaching out to become involved or active is difficult for you, choose one action a week. If you can do more, great. It can be an email supporting a cause, calling a friend or an organization, someone you haven't heard from in a while. You can call your congressional leaders, as Rhonda mentioned. Make a donation to an organization that works with minority groups. Read to a student at Robinson School during, what's the week called again? Read America, right? Read Across America. You You can do that. The main thing is that everyone does something. But it is important to find balance and not become obsessed with helping, because that will wear us out. The balance lies in allowing rest in your life too. It is not laziness. We cannot build resilience for the long haul unless we rest and regroup and recover. But rest isn't synonymous with entertainment. Rest is allowing your body and your mind to disconnect from stimuli that drains you, including what you access online. Third, we can cultivate a robust spiritual practice. And let me be very clear, this is not only an exercise for those who are spiritually somehow superior, or for those who are professional spiritual people. That's a misnomer. It's not a thing. Some people have been given the responsibility of spiritual leaders, but every person must see to their own spiritual and emotional well-being. There are as many spiritual practices as there are people. So here's just a beginning. Every day, take time for silence. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes. It will vary and it will change, but take the time to be completely still and alone. Second, set intentions. This is critically important for all of us who do not want to slide through our lives unconscious and unaware. Ask yourself, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up? You can use this as a journal prompt. Your answer may be taken from Scripture or an articulation of one of your core values, or it can be consciously working to move away from an area of life that's pulling you down. Thirdly, mindful gratitude. I challenge you to write down 3 things that you are grateful for. First thing in the morning, every morning. It will transform you. It takes a few seconds. Incidentally, Rod and I often speak gratitude for farm workers, those who harvest our crops, those who bring the produce to our stores as we sit down to eat a meal. We extend that gratitude to the earth, which feeds us. Gratitude cannot coexist with anxiety. Number 4, meditation. Now that may sound very mystical or impractical to you, but if this is not yet your practice, begin with just 3 deep breaths in and 3 out, just like that, while you're practicing your silence. When you're ready, you can add a word or a phrase to it. For example, you can breathe in, "You are God," and breathe out, "Be still," or "Let go." Something like that. And you repeat that. It's as simple as that. I invite you to join us for the meditation, music, and prayer nights too. 5, spend time in nature. This is something I cannot stress enough, and you would expect that coming from me, as I wrote an ordination thesis entitled Solvitur Ambulando, It is Solved by Walking. Anyway, those of us who are not of indigenous background are already at a disadvantage because we do not have the same relationship to nature yet. This is the first incarnation of God, you know. And simply being in amongst the trees, in your garden, in a park with a variety of plants, or on a bike ride in the woods is transformative. It nourishes your spiritual, your emotional, and your physical life. I'm even trying to become more adept at helping houseplants flourish. That's a challenge for me. Number 6, prayer. Prayer is actually an outgrowth of every facet of our life. As the Apostle Paul writes, or it speaks actually to the people in Athens. We read it. In God we live and move and have our being. Well, if that's the case, then our teaching or our going to school become prayer. Our advocacy, our cooking, our care for children, our gardening, our creative endeavors, our helping those in need, those are all prayers. Prayer is simply acknowledging God in the middle of life with gratitude, with pleas for help, with a longing for wisdom and discernment, and with pure joy. Number 7, turn off social media and TV is a spiritual practice. Indeed it is. Our minds, our emotions, our heart space need defragmentation and restoration. It cannot be done on the run or in a lot of noise. We must limit our input of what we pull into our minds if we want to grow in resilience. Number 8, learn to know Scripture. Begin with the Psalms. Read one psalm a day. Or read through a gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, during the time of Lent. Discover how these ancient wisdom writings will transform how you see the world. And when that happens, you are transformed. Number 9, watch your words. As I mentioned last week, reclaim your language to say what you mean, not what everyone else is saying. In addition, I urge you to use the phrase, I am, minimally. Let's eliminate, I am anxious, or I'm so stressed, or I'm so worried, right from our vocabulary. Write them off. Rather use, I feel anxiety, I feel stress, I feel worry. A feeling can quickly be changed to feeling joyful, or hopeful, or expectant, or calm. I am makes it a defining fixture in your life. That's hard to get rid of. And number 10, and I'll end with this, eat well. That doesn't mean eat extravagantly. It just means eat real food that nourishes your body and your mind and your heart. Food that is actually taken from the earth and is minimally processed. Yes, that is a spiritual practice. But none of these are rules. And there is no guilt for not measuring up because there is no measuring up. These are invitations to fortify your life, our life, as a faith community for this season that we are in. Even one change will make a tremendous difference in your life and also possibly for other people's lives. To quote Jesus again from Matthew 7, if you work these words into your life, you're like a smart carpenter who built his house on solid rock. Rain poured down, the river flooded, a tornado hit, and nothing moved this house. It was fixed on the rock. That house was built for this. Ours can be as well. Take an inventory this week. What are you built for? Where do you need to renovate or shore up your house environmentally or in your spiritual practices? And if we all do this together, it is also community building. May God help us go in peace.